in Pythagorean numerology, we will use your full name as it appears on your birth certificate. Okay. Not to get too woo-woo on you. Okay. But I'm
super woo-woo, so
I'm going to go down a little bit of the woo-woo path for you. We believe those in the numerology world, and I'll just speak for myself, but I think I am speaking, for numerologists overall, that your name and your date of birth is no accident. Okay. And people will, well, but I was, emergency C-section. I wasn't due and blah, blah, blah. And I was late. Okay. That's just, on paper. When you arrive is actually the time you were supposed to arrive. So it really demands that we kind of step back and really shift our perspective about certain things, right? So also, interestingly, it is the name on your birth certificate. So let me make 2 points. The first one is, if you've been a parent, and I have 2 daughters, and I remember thinking about names. I wasn't really big into using family names and blah, blah, blah. And you go along. And then one day, you and your spouse are bantering about, and you're like, oh, that's it. And you think, where does that come from? We would say in the woo-woo realm, that comes from you, the soul, or the, what's going on inside, giving that information to the parent. So that's a little woo for you. And yet also what I find is that the name as it is on the birth certificate is a very interesting thing, because in Pythagorean numerology, if you got to go back and look at it, because if it's misspelled, we still use that misspelling on the birth certificate. If you were born baby girl Jones and then you were adopted, we still look at baby girl Jones as your given name. And then we will look at the other names. So often when the name fluctuates dramatically, I find the basic thing I find as a practitioner of numerology is that it really places a spotlight on your sense of identity, or your misguided sense of, or a feeling of not having a solid, stable identity. That's my personal take on that. But with that said, the numbers that are taken from your name are the expression or the destiny number. We give each letter a numerical value. So A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and so on, 1 through 9. And then like a typewriter goes back and forth, right? And Chaldean is different. Okay. So just so you know. So the expression destiny, full name, and then the soul urge is from the vowels in your name. And that can get tricky, A, E, I, O, U, sometimes Y, sometimes W, depends on train of thought. That's a whole other podcast. And then the personality number is taken from the consonants in your name. Okay, so those are how the name shows up for you. There are other aspects of the name. The first name, middle name, last name have different ways of looking at what they bring to the table for you. The first vowel in your name, the first letter in your name. I mean, you can really do a deep dive into the name in that way. And yet those are very, and if you even think about it, you look at, I mean, would Elton John be Elton John if he were Reginald Dwight? I mean, that's his original name, right? So a lot of movie stars, a lot of performers, and even just people, I mean, I don't know if you have in your life people who've like, I can't tolerate this name, I'm going to change my name. A lot of people decide to change their names. They're never gonna, they can run, but they can't hide from the original name, but also the current name that you use is an overlay. And the longer you're known by that name, the stronger that vibe gets. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. I think, okay. I'm like, I've just been really curious, like what's going on when someone changes their name legally, you know, and because I know like me giving you my information, you ask for the name on my birth certificate and then the name that I go by. And it's interesting to me because I notice this when people change their names, like there's a different energy, like there really is a different energy that comes into play. which is
Yes.
just so cool.
It is really cool. And some I have found are more immediate. And
Hmm.
then some are, again, the way I like to look at it is it's like putting a tea bag into water, into warm water. The longer it steeps in there, the
Yeah.
stronger it gets. I mean, for instance, for me personally, I got married when I was 23. And so after I left my marriage, I kept my name because I had I had daughters and all of that. So I kept my name. So my name is my married name, but I have had that for a much longer period of time now in my life than I ever had my given name. And yet, so for me, I feel the overlay pretty intensely at this point, and yet my foundational energy numbers are always there. But what I do look at is the way some of it diminishes or dissipates, and that the other one kind of starts to take precedence the longer that you've had it. And the current name, for me, that I look at, and most numerologists will look at, is the first and last name you currently use, like you would introduce yourself socially, not like you would sign, not like that's on your passport or your driver's license, or that you would sign a bank statement or something like that. It's that first and last that you go by. Because if you really, really think about it, numerology isn't just numbers per se, it's how things sound. And so again, it's a matter of how it sounds when it comes out of your mouth. Because
Mm.
Christina feels different than Amy,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and so it is a very interesting thing it's kind of like no duh, but it's fun to kind of start looking at the numbers, and you can do the numerology on them and go, oh, you can do a numerology for every word in the
Yeah.
dictionary,
That's so
you know?
cool.
Yeah, yeah,
It's so, I mean, it just a different, I always try, it's like trying to describe the frequency of something. Okay, well, there's like an actual number. I think it gives us something to anchor into, that where it
yeah,
makes more sense, because it's true. It's, or I think about, everybody who knew me the first part of my life called me Christy. And then when I got older, I introduced myself as Christina. And there's a different energy to it. And I showed up differently. And that wasn't
absolutely.
intentional, but I mean, there's actual, like, if I did the numerology on that, I could see, okay, like that's a very tangible way for me to understand why that energy was so different.
Yeah, and what you were shooting for, what that point of, what that desire was to shift that, right?
Hmm.
I mean, my mother I knew her when growing up as Judy, and when she got a divorce, she became Judith.
Yeah.
Right. So I think she wanted to be taken more seriously, right? Or,
Hmm.
or whatever. I mean, I can't guess what her motivations were overall. And yet, I mean, it's like you went from Christy to Christina. So it's like, I want to be taken a little bit more seriously, right?
Yeah.
In some ways. And then there's other things that go with it.